Dan Ariely, I met him. He came and helped us at YouTube, and he's pretty wonderful. He talks about predictable, irrational things. And so hopefully afterwards you can talk to me about why I'm wearing this shirt or this sleeve or the dance or anything. He's quite wonderful. He has 3 books out. And hopefully, I don't know, he helps you kind of understand why you do the things you do when you don't really know why you do them. I don't know if I'm quite capturing that. But anyway, guys, please give it up for Dan Ariely.
Thanks. So we did have fun at YouTube. It was a fun project. So I want to talk to you a little bit about irrational behavior. And in particular, I want to talk about getting people to do the right thing for the wrong reason. You know, when we think about human behavior, we often think that people are motivated by big visions. We want to live healthy, we want to save for retirement. We have these big vision of what we want to do. But the reality is that those things influence our wishful thinking, but they rarely influence our actual behavior. And because of that, we have this tremendous gap between what we know we should be doing and what we actually do. And maybe the saddest result from all of this is a recent study that looked at the meta-analysis. They looked at all the studies that were ever done on how to educate people about financial matters. All the programs in the world ever to try and increase financial literacy. And across all of them, they found that the biggest effects were 6% improvement. These 6% improvement deteriorated over time, and they were the least effective for the people who needed the most. And this is because telling people what's the right thing to do in principle is just not the right way to do anything. And just to think about it for your own personal lives, think about the following. How many people in this room in the last month have eaten more than you think you should? Okay? In the last month, how many of you have exercised less than you think you should? How many people in the last year have saved less money than you think you should? Okay, 2 more questions. How many people here have ever texted while driving? Okay. Now, of course, you all know it's incredibly stupid, right? And not only that, it wasn't because of lack of knowledge. It wasn't as if you sat there and you said, you know what? Let me think about it. How much do I want to stay alive? How much I don't want to kill other people? How important is this text message right now? And you deliberately chose the text message over, you know, this tremendous risk. No, at that moment, you were not thinking at your long-term objective, at the big picture, at safety, at risk, at fines. You were basically tempted by the moment and acted on the moment. Last question. How many people here have ever had unplanned, unprotected sex? Okay, 1. That's very good. Now, if you think about all of those behaviors, these are not behaviors that you don't know what's the right thing to do. You basically know what's the right thing to do. The problem is that knowledge is not the key. And if you think about financial literacy as an example, knowing something about money in principle is one thing, but then as you go through life, and every time you're thinking, should I buy coffee, should I do this, should I do, you're making all these small decisions, that the big general piece of knowledge is very unlikely to translate into a sequence of daily behaviors. I'll give you another example. One day somebody came, I teach at Duke University in North Carolina. One day somebody came to my class and he came to me after class. He said he was the CEO of a company called Panda Express. Anybody knows Panda Express? Okay. What do they sell? No. They sell orange chicken. Now, orange chicken is really unbelievably unhealthy. It's fried twice. It has both salt and sugar. Like, you can't get worse than that. Panda Express is by no stretch of the imagination a health store, but this is the worst thing they sell. But that's basically what they sell, right? How many of you have had orange chicken? Yeah, sugary, fat, salt, you know, you can't. Tasty. Especially in your airport, right? You just finished dealing with the TSA. You're ready for something to overcome that trauma. So he said, what do we do with orange chicken? And he gave us a little store to play with. And the first thing we did was we tried to give people information. That's what we usually think would work. So we wrote calorie labeling on every item in the menu. And what do you think happened? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. By the way, later on, New York City replicated our experiment. They forced every fast food place in New York City to post calorie information. And what do you think happened in New York City? Also nothing. There are a couple of papers showing slight increase in food consumption, calorie consumption. Some show slight decrease, but generally nothing happened. And there are multiple reasons. One is that knowing something doesn't mean anything about acting. The second thing is that calorie information was never really a big surprise for anybody. Nobody ever walked into McDonald's and said, my goodness, I had no idea. Up to now, I was sure this was a health store. Nobody told me. Then, of course, calorie information as a numerical value is very hard to reason about, very hard to think about. And then finally, the problem with that is that on any particular day you can misbehave in terms of your eating habits and nothing will happen. It's only if you do it repeatedly that would have a large effect. So because of that, calorie information had absolutely no value. Now, if you think about all of those problems that we've been talking about, they all are problems of trading off now versus later. And knowledge is really about later, and it's really not very effective for now, because now we are driven by the environment in which we're being placed, and that environment rarely includes high concepts about our knowledge. So if you go to Dunkin' Donuts, the smell, the sight, the environment is controlling your behavior, and what you know about health in general, in principle, as an overall rule, is not going to have any effect. And the sad realization is this set of problems is really killing us. So first of all, let's think in general terms about this problem. This is the problem of now versus later. So imagine I asked you a generic problem. I said, imagine I had half a box of the best possible chocolate, an amazing chocolate. And I asked you, what would you prefer? To get one small box now or one big box in a week? Small box now, big box in a week. And I passed the chocolate around, and you could see it, and you could smell it. And I asked you, which one would you choose? If the chocolate was just here and you were facing this choice, how many of you would say, I'll wait another week for a bigger box? Okay, a few people, maybe 5%. But the rest of you are saying, give me the chocolate now. Not worthwhile to wait a week for a bit more chocolate. Imagine I pushed the choice to the future. And I said, what would you rather have? Half a box of chocolate in a year? Or a small box of chocolate in a year? Or a big box in a year and a week? It's the same trade-off. It's asking, are you willing to wait another week to get a bigger box of chocolate? Framed this way, long in the future, how many people here are willing to wait? Everybody, right? In the future, we're wonderful people. We will exercise, we will diet, we will save money. The future is full of wonders. The problem is we never get to live in the future. We get to live in the present. In the present, we fail time after time after time. And if you think about it, the commercial environment around us is all about getting us to do something now that is good for them. One of the interesting principles from behavioral economics is the environment in which you're being placed determines to a large degree your behavior. What is the environment in which we're being placed? To what degree does it want our long-term well-being, or they want something from us right now? Mostly they want something from us right now, creating tremendous role of temptation. So when they look at these results and they say, what is the percentage of human mortality that is either caused by or aided by bad decisions? You try to estimate that. When they estimated it for the beginning of last century, about 100 years ago, they said it was about 10%. Think about 100 years ago, how could you make a bad decision that would translate to your death? When they look at it now, it's a little bit more than 40%. How come? As we invent more technologies, we also invent ways to kill ourselves. Smoking, diabetes, obesity. I mean, think about all of those. All of those are cases where it's not that you make one bad decision and it kills you. Texting and driving is in that category, but the other ones are not. But a sequence of bad decisions can actually kill you over time. When they were thinking about all kinds of things about smoking, my suggestion was to force the cigarette companies to plant in a very, very few number of cigarettes explosive devices. Now, think about it. Basically, you smoke, you kill yourself, but it's over a long time. What if there were some cigarettes that would just kill you on the spot? Right? You just knew that would... Very different imagery, right? Taking the cigarette out. Is this the one? Okay, so what do we do? So self-control, now versus later, that's a big problem. What can we do about it? And I want to propose a couple of solutions that I think kind of fits with the notion of design in general. And the first solution I want to propose is what is called reward substitution, or doing the right thing for the wrong reason. And I'll tell you a personal story about this. So I was burned many years ago, and I was in hospital for a long time. And one of the things I got in hospital was a liver disease. I got a bad blood transfusion, and you know, it was not fun to be a burn patient, but having a liver disease on top of it was not really exciting. And they didn't really know what was the liver disease, what was the origin. And for a long time, I would have flare-ups and liver problems. And then quite a few years after I was already out of hospital, I was in grad school, I had another big flare-up. I checked myself into hospital, and they told me I had hepatitis C. By that time, they could identify the virus. And they asked me if I want to join an FDA trial for a medication called interferon. Interferon was originally developed as a drug for hairy cell leukemia, and they were trying to see whether it would also work on interferon, on hepatitis C. And I asked them, you know, what happens if I don't take the medication? And they described to me what it feels like to die from liver cirrhosis. So I took the medication. The problem was that the injections were very unpleasant. Not the injection itself, but every time I took the injection, I would get sick for the whole night. Vomiting, headache, shaking, stuff like that. Not as bad as dying from liver cirrhosis, but for sure and tonight. So imagine yourself in this situation. You come home from work or from school, and you know that if you'll give yourself this injection 3 times a week for a year and a half, you might not get liver cirrhosis in 30 days, but for sure you'll have a miserable night tonight. Would you do it? That's an extreme version of all the temptations we've been talking about. Anyway, I took the medication. A year and a half later, I had a liver biopsy. I beat the disease. Since then, interferon has been approved, and there's some better versions of it now. But my physician, Dr. Killenberg, told me that I was the only patient in the protocol that took the medication on time. And the question is, how come? Do I like my liver more than the average person? You know, do I think differently about the future? Do I not get tempted by self-control problems? The answer is no to all of those. The answer was that I created reward substitution. I love movies, so what I did was that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which were injection days, I would start the day by going to a video store. I would rent a few videos I wanted to watch. I would carry them in my backpack the whole day looking forward to watching them. I would get home, I would put a video in, I would inject myself and press play. I did not wait for the side effects to start. I connected something I did not want, the injection, with something I wanted, the movies. Now, the strange things about this thing is that My equation was not injection for liver, it was injection for movies. If you made a list of all the things that are important in life, your liver will be high up there. Movies, not so much, or not at the same level. Nobody would say, oh yes, I would love a world with I'll give up my liver for movies. But what happened was that the effect of the liver was going to be really delayed. The effect of the movies was going to be now. And because of that, movies actually had the higher power to regulate my behavior. So if you think about this as a general metaphor, people should care about their liver. We don't. But we can care about movies. And through caring about movies or something else, we can behave as if we care about our livers. So let's think about some other problems. Let's think about something like global warming for a second. Ask yourself the question, can people care about global warming? The answer is basically no. There'll be a few people over the Bay Bridge, but that's about it. In fact, global warming is one of those problems that is very, very tough to care about. If you went the whole world over and you said, let's search for the one problem that would people have the most apathy about, you would come up with global warming. How come? Long in the future, would happen to other people first. We don't see it progressing. We don't see anybody suffering. Anything we would do is a drop in the bucket. Somebody one time walks on a plane with a little bomb in their shoes and we all take our shoes off for years. Right? Global warming is a much bigger threat. Nobody's doing anything. By the way, if we had a theory that these were like the Martians and are trying to cook us slowly, we would get into action. So can you get people to care by giving them the right information about global warming? The answer is no. Can you do something else? Can you give people something else that would get them to act toward a different goal, but through that behave as if they care about global warming? So let me just ask you, any suggestions? What would you try to do if you're writing the ultimate plan to get people to behave as if they cared about global warming? Okay, you get to watch movies. TV is off unless you behave nicely.
Raise the cost of energy.
Right, so you could charge people, right? You could say people are not doing the right thing for the right reason. Just charge them more, taxes, penalties, all kinds of things. Very good. What else?
Like incentivize, leave the trash out if they don't recycle, and force them to recycle.
Okay, so you can force people. Forcing is good. A little difficult to swallow, but in general, principle works well. Polar bears, yeah. So if you think about what Al Gore did, was he basically gave us a single image. He basically said, you know what, the overall image of global warming is too much. Let's do a polar bear. There's a very nice experiment at Dartmouth, which they created virtual polar bears, and they connected them to the consumption of electricity in each dorm. So each dorm has their own polar bear, and as they use more energy, the polar bear starts drowning. And then it's very nice because the kids are running around different dorms and telling people to turn off electricity, and then the bear, unlike the real global warming, the bears pop up again. Very good. What else? Yeah.
Back in town, I actually had a startup where you take a little book and around, and it incentivizes environmental behaviors such as if you use your cup, you get points for free coffee.
Okay, so you could give people social rewards, or they could be even tangible. You give people reputation, pride, shame. I mean, there's lots of things like that. My favorite, I wish I had more time. I just got, Pierre just told me I need to get ready to wrap up. So my favorite is the Prius. I'm not going to ask you how many of you have Prius. You're the kind of the Prius buying population in general. But if you think about the Prius takes energy consumption and makes it public. It's like it's better than Facebook, right? So you get to sit in your little Prius and you get to say to yourself, look at me, I'm a wonderful, kind human being. I'm driving a Prius. And not only that, but other people can see me and they can appreciate what a wonderful human being I am. And I think this is why people with Priuses smile more than other people. I'll give you one more example. There's a medication called Coumadin. Coumadin is an anti-stroke medication. It's a relatively good anti-stroke medication. It's based on a blood thinner that is very cheap and very effective. But nevertheless, people don't take the medication on time. So for reward substitution, what do we need? We need to measure something, and we need to either reward it or punish it. So now we have this technology called internet-enabled pillboxes. And now when people take the medication, we could do something with it. So again, you can probably imagine lots of things. You can imagine social rewards, and you can imagine shame, and you can imagine locking your refrigerator. I mean, there's lots of things to imagine. Here are some things we've tried. The first thing we tried was to pay people. So we said, what happens if we pay people $3 a day to take the medication on time? What do you think happens? Absolutely nothing. What do you think will happen if we pay them $1,000 a day to take the medication on time? That would probably work. We didn't run that for obvious reasons, but you know, that would probably work. So now the question is, how do we take $3 and make it feel bigger? So the first thing we used was a principle called loss aversion. Loss aversion is the idea that people hate losing much more than they enjoy gaining. So what we did was we prepaid people as if they took the medication for 90 days, and then on the days they did not take the medication, we took money back from them. Much more exciting. But the nicest experiment conducted two things at the same time: lotteries and regret. Lotteries is simple, right? Instead of giving $3 for people to take the medication, they gave them a lottery that gave them 10% chance of making $30. Much more exciting. But they also added regret. And regret is a really interesting phenomenon. Regret is about the fact that our happiness is not driven by where we are, it's driven by a contrast between where we are and where we think we could have been. And if we think we could have been somewhere better, we're miserable. And if we think we could have been somewhere worse, we're happy. So for example, when would you be more miserable? If you missed your flight by 3 minutes or by 3 hours? 3 minutes. Why? Because you can imagine that you would have made it. And because of that, the reality is here, and you contrast yourself to it, and you say, oh my goodness, I'm miserable. If you missed your flight by 3 hours, you can't imagine that other reality. In the 3-minute case, you can say, if the traffic lights change a little faster, if the TSA agent had one more IQ point. By the way, similarly in the Olympics, they showed that who do you think is happier when they get the medal? People who won silver or bronze? That's right. So when you took pictures of people who won medals and you see how big is their smile, it's gold, bronze, silver. Because the silver person is a person who woke up every day for the last 4 years practicing early in the morning. And a minute and a half ago, they got second place. And they can't possibly help but thinking, oh, if only. And the bronze person is saying, look at all the other people. So it's not about our actual happiness, it's about where we could have been. So how do we integrate this into the experiment? Imagine all of you are on Coumadin, you're taking the medication, you're not. If I just do a lottery, I take all of you and I give you lottery tickets. If I try to add regret, I give everybody a lottery ticket, whether you took the medication or not. And I call you up and I say, congratulations, you're the winner of the coveted lottery. Your lucky day, sadly, I see you did not take your pill today, so you're not getting the money. This is the essence of regret, and now you'll do a lot not to experience this again. And the good news is with those two things, lotteries and regret, compliance rate goes from the 60% to almost 98%. So the sad news is that people don't seem to behave as if we care about our long-term well-being. The good news is that we don't have to give up hope. We can actually re-engineer the environment. The moment we understand that people are not motivated by long-term big goals, but instead are motivated by short-term immediate rewards and how the environment around them is structured, we can get people to behave differently. We can get people to behave in the right way, even not always for the right reasons. Thank you very much.